In 2018, I hired my first employee, the typical small business, whether you're admin and your beauty therapist in one. But in fact, she kept the clinic running when I couldn't do everything alone. And hiring her was actually the first real act of growth I'd made. And the first time I'd said out loud, this is becoming something bigger than just me. I was excited, I was terrified, but I was so proud. But unfortunately, at that time, the person who I was building a life with questioned my growth instead of providing support. I remember being met with this level of suspicion. When I would stay back after hours in the clinic, I was busy. Comments that even now, I remember them exactly. Why do you need more? Why aren't you happy with what you have? When will you ever be happy? I didn't have an answer. I didn't really expect that, to be honest. And I hadn't prepared for the possibility that my growth could feel like a threat to the people who loved me and supported me. That was the first time I felt it. That specific loneliness. Not the feeling of being unloved, but rather being misunderstood. This was really challenging for me. The thing about that moment is that I internalized it. I didn't push back. I didn't say, this is growth, this is good, this is what building something looks like. I just absorbed it. I started to wonder if there was something wrong with me, if my ambition was actually a problem, if maybe wanting more was genuinely incompatible with being a good partner, a good mother, or perhaps even a good person. The energy in my home became something I had to manage. I had to be careful about how enthusiastic I was, careful about how much I shared. The clinic was growing, but I was muting myself constantly. And what's strange is that you adapt to it so gradually, you don't even notice you're doing it. You stop mentioning the good days. You actually stop sharing the wins. You carry the weight of building something entirely alone. Not because nobody's there, but because sharing becomes more costly than the silence. That is not a small thing to live with. A few years later, I bought my first car. Not my first car as a teenager, obviously. My first real purchase as a woman from my own career. I remember being so freaking proud of that Range Rover Sport. I had earned it. I knew exactly what it had cost me in work and consistency, and in times when showing up wasn't easy or smooth. I don't drive that car anymore. I've grown and moved on, and my life looks very different now than it did then. But I remember exactly what it felt like to pull up in it for the first time. That specific, quiet pride. But in all honesty, I remember more the moments that pride started to curdle. Because the comments came, not from strangers, but from people I'd called friends. The kind of comments wrapped in humor, in casual conversation. You know those times when you can't quite call them out without sounding oversensitive? But those comments circulated. She thinks she's too good now. She works too much. She prefers material things over time with her children. Oh God, I remember those so clearly. I want to be clear about what was happening there. Those comments weren't about my car. They were about the fact that I'd moved forward, that I had grown beyond their shared understanding of what we were all supposed to want and supposed to be. There's like this unspoken agreement in most social circles that we all stay roughly the same size. We might have different lives, different circumstances, but the ambition, the reach, the scale of what we want stays within a certain range. It keeps those things comfortable. It keeps things equal. The funny thing is, when you break that agreement, not maliciously and not even consciously, but just by growing, you get punished for it. And the punishment doesn't look like cruelty. It looks like concern. You know those gentle jokes? The silences? It looks like a gradual withdrawal of warmth that you feel, but you just can't quite prove. And that was confusing to me. I started to feel like embarrassed about my own success. I started to qualify it, to downplay it, to make myself smaller in rooms full of people I used to actually feel at home with. I felt foreign, like a person who had accidentally crossed a border no one told me was there. I want to name what this is because I think we spend a lot of time blaming ourselves for it. This isn't about being arrogant or about prioritizing success over relationships or even a character flaw that needs to be managed. What's happening is you're operating at a frequency that the people around you aren't tuned into. Not because they're bad people, but because they haven't chosen what you chose. And that difference in your direction, your drive, and in the scale of what you're willing to build, it begins to create a gap that love alone simply cannot bridge. The person who asks, "Why do you need more?" is not asking a philosophical question. They're telling you that wanting more makes them uncomfortable, or that your growth is exposing something in them that they haven't actually resolved yet. I learned that is their work to do, not yours. And those people who made those comments about your car at the dinner table, in the group chats, they just weren't seeing you clearly. They were seeing their own limitations reflected in your progress and calling it a personality flaw in you. I want you to know that you're allowed to want more. You're allowed to build. You're allowed to drive the car you earned and damn feel proud of it without justification. But guys, the loneliness is real. I won't dress it up. Losing the ease of relationships that no longer fit, even when you are the one who has grown, is a genuine grief. You don't just shrug it off. But the answer is not to shrink back to a size that makes everyone else comfortable. You should simply refuse that idea. And in fact, you need to find people who are on your new frequency. And yes, those people do exist. They're the ones who are genuinely interested and create discussions when you share a milestone. The ones who you don't need to downplay your wins. And the ones who understand that wanting to build something real is not evidence of greed, vanity, or bad priorities. It is evidence of a particular kind of aliveness. Most of them are building something too. Most of them have sat at a table and felt the same quietness. Most of them have learned, as I did, to carry it alone before they found people who also made the carrying lighter. If you're in that period right now where growth has made you feel more isolated, I want you to know that feeling is temporary. Not because the loneliness magically disappears, but because you're in the act of building towards a world where it fits less and less. And the car they judged me for is long gone. Not because they were right, but because I kept going. I'm no SarahLouise. This is the Business Injection, and I'll see you next time.